As a data center, I love talking networking. So when Nokia dropped by the other day, we had a great conversation.
Nokia?
What? Yes, Nokia's in data centers. They have the entire networking portfolio. Anyway, I said...
The Nokia?
Yes, the Nokia. They connect inside, they interconnect outside. So I said, can you help me be really AI ready? And they just smiled. You see...
Really?
Really.
Get your data center AI ready. Someday is here with Nokia.
Really.
Unspoken Issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Unspoken Issues podcast. This go round, we're going to be discussing a comic book that I chose, but you were the one that threw it out there. Is that right? Chris Armstrong?
I believe, this is going back to the poll was back in, I think, in October. It was a landslide. I don't have the numbers, but it was between help us decide a topic for an upcoming episode. Which hero in a strange new world do you want to hear about? Superboy in a Kirby Commandy-inspired setting, or Havok in the dark X-Men universe of Mutant X? And Mutant X won handily.
Wow.
The Superboy issue was issue 50, and it started a 4-part story where he woke up in an almost Planet of the Apes type thing, like a Commandy type world. I liked it a lot when it came out back in the late 90s. I haven't reread it since then. But Mutant X was the clear winner.
All right. So Mutant X. Now, I knew a little bit about this comic book, so much so that I was like, at one point, I'd love to read what happens here, because this is one of those ones that's kind of speaking my language. I'm an alternate universe type of guy. Evan's not able to join us tonight, but he and I have had many conversations about What If comics. We're both big fans of those alternate universe tales. So when I heard that Havok was going to be going into an alternate universe, so that's what the premise of Mutant X was, I was like, oh, that sounds like something I could dig. And I ended up with a ton of these issues. At some point, I would love to catalog every time that I've said, I own these issues, but I've never read them.
Yeah. Hey, I'm in the same.
I have so many of these, and this is one of them. I'm pretty certain I have the first maybe 15 issues of Mutant X. This was an auction find. Didn't know what I was getting when I got it, but I remember going through the long box, and this guy had a ton of 90s comics, bagged and boarded Mutant X. I had a nice little run of Mutant X, and I was like, what is this about? Learn what it was about, and I was like, put it on. I got to read this at some point. So finally, this gives me the excuse to sit down and read Mutant X, and we're doing Mutant X #1. So this is 98. Were you picking this up, or what was going on here end of the world?
I was on this from the beginning. I was excited when it was announced, or I guess I'd just seen ads and stuff. Interestingly, the lead up to it in X Factor 149, I don't have it in front of me, but there was an X Factor issue where Havok dies.
It's 149, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. And we see in Mutant X #1, his soul is transported into this other universe where their Havok dies at the same time, and he takes over their Havok's body. He's in this alternate universe of a darker version of the Marvel Universe, and this is after Age of Apocalypse. We had Elseworlds and What If. There wasn't totally unique, but it was also not as lousy as it's been in the last 10 or 15 years, where everything is a multiverse, alternate universe type thing. It was still fairly novel at this point, especially an ongoing series. If I remember right, this was intended to be 12 issues, and then they were going to send Havok back to the main Marvel universe, but it was such a success, they extended it, and it went for a few years. Having an ongoing alternate universe type thing was pretty novel, and I really enjoyed all of the alternate versions of these familiar characters, and it's like a clever way for Marvel to have its cake and eat it too, is in regards to killing a big character. You know he's going to be back. You get the emotional impact with the characters that are going to mourn him. The reader knows he's going to be back because he's in this other universe now, and then eventually they're going to bring him back. So they got now, they just kill somebody, and how many times can the character die? I don't want to get into an old man yells at cloud soapbox, but come on, guys, it's getting really annoying now.
Right.
But at this point, it was a unique way to do it. I was on from the early going. I remember it was supposed to end at 12, but they continued it, and I kind of lost interest in the teens and then eventually fell off. It's all on the Marvel Universe app now, the whole series. I plan to go through and read everything I haven't read yet. I remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, once it got into the later stories past what they had planned initially, it wasn't quite as good. I ended up dropping off.
was the one of the reasons when you picked the book up, Mutant X #1, was it because Howard Mackie's name was associated to it?
It might have been because I liked Howard Mackie's Ghost Rider stuff. He had done some Spider-Man stuff that I kind of liked. He had been in charge of the Amazing Spider-Man and Peter Parker Spider-Man relaunches around this same time. So he was kind of a big deal for Marvel in the late 90s. I honestly can't remember if I cared that much because I was 17, 18 when this came out. I was probably just thinking, hey, this is going to be cool. It's got an evil Archangel in it. That could be cool.
Well, I know you're a Ghost Rider fan. I know you're a Danny Ketch fan. And we've talked about Ghost Rider so much on here. I was like, was he recognizing that name from that book going on to this other book?
Yeah, but I don't know that it was necessarily factored in as much as just the concept being cool.
Okay. Here's the thing. Back in the 90s, that's the exact way that I'm making decisions on comics. I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, this concept is neat. I'm not paying attention to who's writing it. And I know I've said that many times on here. I was visually attracted to a comic before I even thought of who was writing it. I read a lot of good stuff because of how things were drawn. So that's not a detriment. It's just that I wasn't giving that much thought as I do nowadays. Let me give our listeners, if you haven't ever heard of Howard Mackie, some Mike's Amazing World of Comics summary here for you. He starts in Marvel in the late 80s, writing odd issues here and there. And in 89, he starts a small run on Marvel Comics Presents in issue 24 with an 8-issue story that features Havok. He's also writing a run on Avengers Spotlight, telling a Hawkeye story up to March of 1990. That's when he is given the reins to write the first issue of the new Ghost Rider series. And we know as far as the 90s go, Mackie and Ghost Rider are going to be joined at the hip until late 1995, which is about 70 issues. And in August of 1995, following a tiny run by John Francis Moore, Mackie is given the writing duties to X Factor, starting with issue 115. By November of 1995, Mackie is splitting his duties writing X Factor and Adjectiveless Spider-Man. And then, in July of 1998, Mackie finishes his run with X Factor on issue 149. And then, by August 12th, Mutant X #1 is on the shelves. So Mackie is taking that character. But I mean, clearly he's got a love for Havok.
Yeah.
You mentioned issue 149. That's where Mackie's run stops on X Factor, and we're going right into Mutant X.
Mackie must be a younger brother as well.
I get it. Oh, man. Well, let's talk about the penciler Tom Raney. He is doing penciling duties on this book as well. Tom starts penciling in late 1990 and does some odd jobs, some issues of Uncanny X-Men. You might have recognized his art on if you picked up any Warlock and the Infinity Watch or Warlock Chronicles. That stuff that kind of sticks out there. In 1995, Raney heads to Image, doing 2 issues of Team 1 Storm Watch, which I think there were only 2 issues of that, if I remember right. Then he does Wet Works. By July of 96, he starts a pretty consistent run on Storm Watch up to issue 50. In August of 1997. Then, after a single issue of DV8, he then picks up penciling duties on Mutant X. His work on the title lasts for 4 issues, 1, 3, and 5 on Mutant X. So that's where we see Tom Raney come in. He's not here very long, but his art in this book, if you've seen any of those other titles, you might be aware of what we're talking about.
That's interesting that he didn't do very many, because when I think Tom Raney, the first thing I think is Mutant X, because this is probably the first thing I'd ever read that he was the artist on. At least in this first issue, I really like his stuff, but I don't recall him being off that quickly.
Yeah, it was only issue. Same here. Issues 1 through 3, and then issue 5. I recognize him from the Warlock and the Infinity Watch. That's the art that it reminds me of. I didn't read much of that, but my buddy had plenty of those books, and I'm pretty sure I saw the covers. Inked by Andrew Papoy, lettered by Chris Eliopoulos, and colored by Gina Going Rainey. I did not look to see if that is Tom's wife.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm ready for a synopsis here. All right. Welcome to the world of Mutant X. Here, Alex Summers is the leader of the Six, a team made up of distorted versions of people that we know from the 616. There's Bloodstorm, a fierce and deadly vampiric version of Storm. The Brute. He is a terrifying green monster version, dumbed down version of the Beast. Iceman, whose cold powers have consumed his humanity. The Fallen, a menacing angel, and that's with a capital A, with a dark, fiery presence. And at the center of it all, his wife in this reality, Madeline Pryor. Now, the powerful and commanding Marvel Woman.
That's what her code name is.
That's right. The story opens with chaos as the Six leap into action against towering mechanical sentinels intent on purging mutants from the gene pool. In the heat of battle, Alex dives to protect Maddie from a blast and is hit and thrown into a river, falling unconscious, nearly drowning. At this same moment, the Alex Summers we are familiar with, known as Havok, experiences what he believes is the moment of his death during a mission gone wrong in his reality. An explosion, a flash of light, and then nothingness. Instead of dying, Alex wakes up in the strange and twisted world of Mutant X, one that feels familiar but is utterly wrong. Dispatching the last Sentinel, Alex is left questioning everything. He knows he's not the Alex Summers of this world, but he doesn't understand what's happened or how he ended up here. One thing is certain, this world is far more dangerous and unpredictable than the one he left behind. If he's going to survive, he'll need to learn fast. As Alex Summers struggles to make sense of his new reality, Madeline Pryor implores him to remember their shared life together, revealing their son, Scotty, and a history that feels foreign to him. Despite her heartfelt pleas, Alex remains resistant, his memories fragmented and his sense of identity shaky. The urgency intensifies when Aurora, Bloodstorm, reports that S.H.I.E.L.D. terrorists have seized Liberty Island, threatening mutant lives. Madeline's desperation peaks as she begs Alex to help save their son, who is caught in the crossfire. The team, known as the Six, rallies for action, but Alex's internal conflict deepens. He's skeptical of this world and its truths, but realizes the stakes are too high to ignore. The story accelerates as Alex reluctantly agrees to aid the mission. The Six prepare for a confrontation on Liberty Island with tensions and doubts hanging thick in the air. As the group moves out, Alex is left grappling with the weight of his supposed history, his connection to Madeline, and the danger awaiting them. Colonel Nick Fury positions himself on Liberty Island, rallying his S.H.I.E.L.D. forces with a sinister plan, the Legacy Virus, a weapon designed to target mutants and enhanced beings. Fury threatens to detonate it unless all super freaks leave the country. His ultimatum sends shockwaves through the mutant community, escalating tensions to a breaking point. The Six arrive, determined to stop Fury's madness. Madeline Pryor, seething with fury as Scotty is at Liberty Island at that moment, implores Alex Summers to recall their shared past and the pain they endured when their son Scotty was taken from them. Her desperate pleas are met with Alex's continued confusion, his memories fragmented and unreliable. The S.H.I.E.L.D. forces deploy advanced man-droid units to combat the Six. The mutants clash with Fury's troops in a chaotic display of powers and determination. The Fallen is taken out early, while Hank, the Brute, and Aurora, Bloodstorm, struggle against overwhelming odds. Madeline, fueled by her rage and amplified abilities as the Goblin Queen, unleashes a terrifying assault, declaring her resolve to save Scotty at any cost. Alex's doubts begin to resurface. He questions the reality of the situation, wondering if it's all an elaborate illusion. But as the fight rages on and Fury's forces falter, Alex is forced to confront the moment's urgency. Fury's sinister ploy to use Scotty as bait becomes clear, adding a personal stake to the conflict. Madeline's maternal instincts and unyielding power turn the tide, inspiring the Six to rally. Elektra, Scotty's nanny, joins in the fight and takes out Fury's forces with lethal precision. The battle reaches its climax when Alex confronts Fury directly. Harnessing his energy powers, Alex blasts Fury into the river and disables the Legacy Virus device, ensuring the safety of all mutants and enhanced beings. As the dust settles, Scotty is reunited with his mother, but Alex's turmoil remains unresolved. His amnesia and disjointed memories prevent him from fully embracing the role of a father or leader. In a poignant moment, Scotty's rejection of Alex as his father cuts deep, leaving Alex questioning his identity and purpose. The issue ends on a foreboding note as Alex recalls the explosion caused by Greystone's time displacement machine, triggering fragmented memories of his death. Oh my goodness, there it is. The synopsis is done.
Lots of stuff happening.
Wow, was there ever?
A lot of wheels turning.
So, I mean, already we're in this other world, and we got Fury in his USA agenda, which, kick everybody out of here. My gosh, I was like, this is when again, 98?
Yeah.
This is 98 we're looking at this? I mean, boy, it just felt like nothing's changed, or more things change, the more they stay the same. But Nick Fury is not like that, obviously, in the 616, but just, you can see it's not maybe there is a couple bad days that he had that could turn him into this pretty easily.
Right. Now, did you, when you read it, did you have the Shield files at the end of your issue?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to point out the Shield moniker, it means something different in this universe.
Do you remember what it is?
Saviors of humanity by intervention in the evolution of life form deviants.
So we're thrown into this new world. We're the fish out of water. This is a character that has no idea what's going on. And he's thrown into this weird version of his own reality. I love it.
One of the interesting things about the way Mackie sets up all these characters, they're all like twisted versions of X-Men characters. These versions all have a basis in the 616 reality where things went a little differently. Like, Bloodstorm, Aurora, and forgive me because most of these storylines I only am familiar with mostly from, the trading cards because I haven't read a lot of the 80s X-Men stuff. But, at one point, Aurora was bitten by Dracula or a vampire and became a vampire. She was changed back at some point. But in this reality, she never changed back. She was always a vampire. Warren was turned into Archangel in 616. And in this universe, he's a darker version. Instead of the metal wings, he has leathery bat wings, and he's a lot more demonic. His name is the Fallen, so obviously Angel, the Fallen.
Yeah, Angel
is a demon. Madeline Pryor, all that stuff with the Goblin Queen, that was a late 80s X-Men storyline. And I believe the thing with Bobby Drake was part of there was a crossover where the X-Men and the Asgardians were involved, but I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I assume that's where the seeds of that came from. And in this reality, Bobby became cursed as a permanent Iceman. And then, Hank, it's just a different version of Hank. Instead of being a blue furry guy, he's a scaly beast with cloven hooves. And he's lost all of his intelligence, more childlike. But all the roots of all these versions are in big 80s X-Men stories. Mackie was probably already working at Marvel in the late 80s, but as a fan, I'm sure he was a big fan of all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, sure. What better way to kind of okay, this is the team, but it's not the team you're used to. So already you're just like, and the Shield files at the end are great. Although one could argue maybe you want to keep some of that, and I'm sure they kept some stuff off of there, but maybe you would like to reveal some of that throughout the story and not give the whole history away. But
they were also intended to only have 12 issues.
Good point. Yeah, fair point. We're going into this issue 1. You're right. You want to set the stage for these characters, and there's an argument to be had of okay, they're strange to these new readers. We got to give them as much history as we can. And what better way to do it than at the end of the book? Let's learn about each one of these guys and why they are who they say they are. I love that we got a Madeline Pryor in this. We've got a Goblin Queen that is married to this world's Havok. These two have always seemed, we just talked about, I think that came up on our last podcast that we just recorded with Evan, where there's these two have been linked together in some way. And here they're definitely, they found each other, they found love, and they're also trying to lead this team. Do we learn in here that Scotty is not exactly Havok's son? Do we learn that in this issue?
There's a reference. Yeah, there's a reference to that. It's like her saying, "Don't throw that in my face" or something like that, but they don't explain it. I'm sure it's explained in future issues, but I don't recall what it was.
All right.
What the explanation.
My other note here was, what is up with the Fallen? He's weird and disturbing. Just his personality is way different than what we're used to with Warren Worthington. Mm-hmm. And he's not the stoic rich guy that he usually is. This is a version of him that is clearly damaged and just a little bit out there, embracing who he is and what he looks like. His personality, to me, I think there's a point where he's just kind of like hanging around on a wall.
Like a gargoyle.
Yeah, it's really strange. I knew that we were going to get this nice alternate take on what we were used to, and I wasn't disappointed. I mean, I was like, okay, we got S.H.I.E.L.D., who is the villains here. Okay, what other things? What other, this is the dark universe, Star Trek style. What other fun stuff are we going to run into? Let's just see. I was pleased, and I really am sorry that I didn't have the chance to read this in the past, because I was a big X-Men fan throughout like the late 90s. I was picking up X books. I know I've talked about this before, but I was picking up X books from my pull list. When I was going to college, I would come back home and I would pick up everything. I guess at this point, maybe I stopped because
there were also a whole lot of X books to pick up.
right. Me and the wife got married in July of 98. So I'm certain I was probably like, okay, I've got to figure out where my money's going to go now that we're on our own. Even though we're together, I'm not going to have as much cash flow. Yeah. So I had to stop pretty much buying things consistently. This might have been something that, even though I was aware of it, I was cutting way back on stuff. I remember picking up Cable throughout the mid to late 90s and X-Man. That was where I was going with this. I really enjoyed X-Man. The Age of Apocalypse, Cable had come over to our world. And so I'm a fan of these types of stories. These are the types of stories that talk to me because I like to learn about these alternate characters. I love watching their adventures. And so now, instead of Nate Gray coming into the 616 and trying to make it, now we got Havok going out of the 616 and trying to make it, which I think is still going to make for a good story.
You're following this character that you're familiar with, and you're discovering all this weirdness at the same time as Alex. It's like he's your POV character to this new world. And as the series goes on, in the second or third issue, the Fantastic Four show up, Spider-Man shows up pretty early. You see a lot of the other Marvel staples and their versions in this universe.
Can't wait. That's exciting to me. That's something that makes me want to continue to pick this up. You know, I really enjoyed a recent title called Exiles, which was kind of similar, where they were popping in and out of different universes.
I wonder if they ever visited Mutant X. I read Exiles a handful of issues, but I never followed it. So
there is a great arc in the 50s where it's just called World Tour, and they end up over in like the Liefeld, Heroes Reborn.
They go to the 2099 world or something.
They pop around, and I dug it, but I don't remember them heading over here at all. Not that I can recall anyway. And again, it's been a while since I've read them. I'd love to see it. It'd be pretty cool. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the issue, man?
Yeah, I really liked it. Revisiting it for the first time in a long while, I'm drawn right back into the world, and I'm looking forward to reading more and seeing how it all worked out. We know that Havok does eventually get back to the the 616. Yeah, I like in the early conflict we have the Mutant X universe's version of Sentinels. You know, they're like chatty. They have personalities. They also have like skull-like heads. Like they're not as robotic. Like I guess they are robots, but they are more human than the standard Sentinels for some reason.
I thought of Death's Head for some reason. Granted, that's not what they're going for. I think your description of sort of a skull looking is definitely better, but that's what I was thinking of when I first saw these guys. It's like, what is it? Yeah, some Death's Head 2 going on there. Does the other Havok show up? Are there stories of him in the regular Marvel universe as him trying to figure
so? I think he's just dead. He gets the short end of the stick. He just is dead, and his body is taken over by the 616 Havok. As far as I know, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we find out later that he's comes back in some way. But to my knowledge,
he's hanging out with Dark Beast over in the 616 somewhere.
Brute might be my favorite of the redesigns. Like it's cool that they use the Mohawk Storm. So I guess she doesn't have strictly a Mohawk, but it's evoking that 80s Storm look. Fallen looks pretty cool, but I think my favorite is the Beast redesign with the hooves and the scales and everything. He's just really the most unique of all these redesigns. I really like that one. It's cool that their headquarters is a haunted castle. They make reference to the fact that maybe Brood or somebody thought that it was haunted, or maybe the locals thought it was haunted or something. And I believe it at some point in the story, we find out that that's not too far off. This is a real horror version of the X-Men, not just a darker version. There's a lot of horror elements and stuff there. So that makes sense.
That's right up Mackie's alley. If he's doing all this Ghost Rider stuff, I'm sure that probably bled into what he wanted to do next. You got to give it to Mackie here. I wish I would have looked it up. Maybe he went to the office and said, guys, I got a great idea for Havok. I'm sure that's probably how it went. 12-issue series of Havok going into a different world. And they were like, yeah, sure, as long as... Right. And they're like, well, as long as you can continue to do whatever other book he was doing at the time for them. And he's like, yeah, sure. So he gets handed a brand new title. That's not too common, really. I mean, we got the same character on a brand new, a totally different world. A lot of times, for me, in my experience, but when I was walking into a comic store in the 90s, if it wasn't already set in the universe that I'm used to, it's kind of tough for me to pick up that new issue. And I'm sure that he probably looked at that as a pretty big challenge for this book. He was given the reins to tell a story in this world.
Right.
I think that's, I'm glad it became successful, because that's really cool. When you turn your 12-issue series into something more, that's awesome. Go ahead.
And I would think almost complete creative freedom, I would think, just because we're only going to do this for a year. You can just do whatever you want.
Right.
And it worked out well enough. Yeah.
You can make anybody look bad. Nick Fury is looking horrible in this already. So you could just do whatever you want in this series, because it's all going to go away in 12 issues. That's pretty cool. Yeah. We just get a taste in this first issue of some of the craziness that awaits us in this world, which I love. I love Nick Fury and his villainous ways. I'm looking at a panel right now. He may possibly be pointing to Dum Dum Dugan. I don't know if that's actually him.
He calls him Dum Dum. Yeah.
Oh, he does. He does. Dum Dum. Assemble a mutant tactical squad now. I think Dum Dum was probably one of the ones that I learned from either, I never read anything with him in it except for probably a Marvel official handbooks to the Marvel Universe. That was probably where I was like, oh, what is this guy? Who is this guy? Oh, okay. With the weird hat. All right. Got it.
The last thing I really had as far as my notes, this is the original attack on Liberty Island that Bryan Singer would lift for the X-Men movie a few years later. I don't know that that's true, that was inspired, but hey, why not? We can go ahead and drag his name with him some words. Fine with me. But yeah, it was cool to have Elektra in there. When they first said her nanny, or Scotty's nanny, I assumed it was going to be Agatha Harkness, because I believe she was Franklin's nanny at one point. Maybe that's why I was thinking that. But when I got to where it's Elektra, oh yeah, Elektra was the nanny for Scotty. And then also young Scotty does know. He is well aware that Alex is not his real dad. There was a reference to Madeline saying don't bring that up, or maybe there's some confusion about who his parent is. But the point is that Scotty knows this is not the Alex that he's familiar with.
Right.
He can sense that he's not the same guy.
Do you recall any of the issues that you remember reading? Is Scotty powered in any way?
I would assume so, but I don't remember specifically. Yeah.
All right. I was just curious. He's hanging out with the power pack or something. Nice way of setting things up for the future here. Okay, well, let's pick a panel here. I'll let you go first because you most likely did your homework. I'll kind of bounce off of that.
I got page 19. This is kind of a cheat because it's a splash page, but it's a whole bunch of different images. It's basically the complete history of the Mutant X-Men, where it shows them. I assume Marvel Woman is because Marvel Girl was the original Jean Grey code name, and then I guess this version became Marvel Woman when she got older. I don't know if that ever happened to Jean, but we kind of see Dracula digging into Storm. We see Loki, and we see Apocalypse harassing the Fallen and changing him. So it's a lot of cool stuff, and pretty. Raney does a good job of combining it all into one fluid image.
Yeah, it's a good pick, man. I mean, you're getting a lot of history. I love these pieces where you bring in character after character and version of different characters and trying to fit everything on one page. We got the one moment where Aurora gets bit by Dracula. And it's the original X-Men as we see them. It's real good. I am going to go with the Havok panel where he is screaming, "Not this time." And there are little circles. Havok was always such an interesting character to me because I never could tell how in the world or what in the world his power set was, other than he could just blast stuff. But I think what I ended up learning later, it's like plasma blast, if I remember correct, or something along those lines.
Superheated plasma or something like that.
Right. That panel right there, it's where he's getting ready to unleash on a Sentinel. It's pretty sick because he's just screaming, "Not this time." And he's got all this power and all this crackle once again just emanating around him. It looks really, really cool.
Minor complaint, I'm reading this on Marvel's app. The cover is just which is a cool tagline of "Fear him, fear for him." It's a gatefold cover where if you had the actual issue, the front cover and the back cover make one image, and on the app you only get the front cover. It doesn't
it doesn't give you the gatefold.
Right.
Wow.
And there's also something weird going on in the app where the pages are clearly just scans of an actual comic. You can see the grain and stuff. I looked ahead to issue 2, and it looks completely digitized, clean and crisp and everything. But that first issue, it's like they lost the original art or something and weren't able to, or maybe those files were corrupted or something. They couldn't reproduce that digitally, so they just had to do copy scans like you would find online or whatever. But
yeah,
anyway, that's a minor point. But
I was going to say, there's an alternate cover. I don't know if it's in there or not, but I'll show you this. I'll send it to you. You ever seen this cover?
Not until I was looking for an image a minute ago. Yeah, I guess that's a variant.
I'm pretty sure that I have the one that you sent. That's the one that I ended up with. This one, this is... So to describe to our listeners, it's just Havok's face and his chest, and it's a pretty big close-up on him, just him, red background, and of course the yellow circles. All right, well, why don't you let the people know? Let's get into plugs. You tell them all about small screeners and tell them all about Because Movies.
Yeah, I got a couple other podcasts I do with my buddy AJ where we talk about movies. One is Small Screeners, where we talk about direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. And we've got one called Because Movies, where we kind of cover different topics. And been on kind of a hiatus for both of those recently due to personal stuff. But you can find on the Because Movies feed, late last year we did, for the 25th anniversary of 1999, we had the best movies of 1999. And we also did a Horror Hall of Fame in October, where we picked out some of our favorite movies, directors, actors, and actresses of the horror genre, and made the inaugural class of the Hall of Fame in the horror genre on that episode. So you can check those out at the Because Movies podcast feed.
I love it, love it, love it. Well, yeah, as far as source material goes, Unspoken Issues, you can find the Unspoken Issues podcast on the Source Material Comics feed, where we have all sorts of episodes, well over 100 episodes right now, and we are chugging along. So if you want to go back in the archives and listen to us talk about 90s comics, you should be able to find that pretty easily. Just find the Source Material Comics feed and then filter out Unspoken Issues. We talk 90s comics, Source Material. That's right. The Source Material Comics podcast. We have all sorts of discussions. Right now, myself and Mark Radulich are jumping into the world of Dan Slott's She-Hulk. We have covered the 2004 series, 1 through 6, and then 7 through 12, and then the first 5 issues of the 2005 series. A lot of fun, a lot of good discussion over there on that. And then, of course, Snap Material, where me and Evan Bevins get together and talk about Marvel Snap. We drop about 4 20-minute episodes each month, talking about previous season, the upcoming season. And if you dig playing Marvel Snap, you can listen to me and Evan Bevins get a lot of things wrong, but have a lot of fun doing it. So it's a good time all around. That being said, we are getting out of here. That over there is Chris Armstrong. I am Jesse Starcher. We will be talking to you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.